Now, we unfortunately don't have the microphone anymore, so I decided, I gave it up. Okay, but you have to stop talking, otherwise it will be very difficult for me. Okay. Now, just a couple of announcements about the exams. I will start grading them again starting tonight. I wasn't able to do anything this week, in the beginning of the week, as I already told you. So I'm hoping that you will be able to pick them up, look your mistakes, and read the comments on Monday. So this is basically, I brought everything to the last possible second. So it will be available on Monday. So that's number one. Now you have a number of quizzes and homeworks to be graded. They are grading them. My assistants are grading them. So it will take some time. But they are always also going to be available sometime next week. Some of them will be probably before the weekend. But all of them will be available at least 1 week before the exam. You're going to have your exam on the 16th of April. As already, there was some mistake in the beginning of the semester. So I am repeating it. It will be on the 16th of April. Now, your stage B of term paper is due next week, 8th of April. Okay, can I have your attention, please? I don't have the microphone, so you need to stop talking among yourselves. Otherwise, my voice will be lost, and I may even become a prime minister. Okay. So, which is very bad. I don't want that. Okay. So, no, believe me, I don't want to be in his shoes in these days. It's very difficult. So, okay, I'm very happy with what I'm doing here. Okay. I can even shout more, actually, just to prevent that. Okay, so some of you did not pick up your stage A term papers. So I brought it here, and I will be able to give you in person. So during the break, please come down and form a line, and then I will be able to hand it back to you. If by any chance you were not able to get it today, then you have to make an appointment with the assistants to pick it up. Okay, so these are the announcements. Any questions that you have in mind other than these, other than the announcements that I made? Yes?
More explain to how can we make use of assistants when we are preparing our stage?
Okay, you have to contact them first. Contacting them means that I am doing this way. If you write an email like this, I am doing it this way, is it okay? The response will be meaningless. Even if she or he says yes or no, it doesn't mean anything. So problem is, if you have anything in mind specifically, either you have to make an appointment or make sure that you explain it well in your email. So this is the way actually to proceed. Now, of course, if you come to the last second, they are also students, and they have their own requirements. So they may not be able to come up and help you if you call them, and they will not be available in 1 hour. So you have to make sure that you contacted them this week. Last week, I told you that you should do that. They are a resource that you are not utilizing, and I'm very sorry for that. Not only sorry for you, but sorry for them as well, because they were ready to help you. You still have time even after stage B, okay, till the last point of the term paper submission. So please make use of them in the best possible way. Okay, any other questions? Now, today we're going to talk about a topic which is very important in the sense that this is not only important for our field, but this is in general important for a university student. So the topic is critical thinking. There are a number of readings that I have already assigned you, and a number of videos that we are going to watch here, and we will go over some readings, and we will make some exercises actually next hour. We're going to do some small exercises and make sure that we understand certain concepts of it. Now, unfortunately, this is not something that you will be able to, all of you will be able to appreciate immediately. So my recommendation to those is to read more on critical thinking, not only the readings that I'm giving you, but you can find many readings from different universities all over the world, actually. It's very easy to find certain things to read, and make sure that you understand the basic ideas, because I think that's the important part. In a number of courses that you are going to take at the university, not necessarily engineering courses, for example, the humanities courses that you are going to take in the second year are also geared towards giving you critical thinking experience. So these are, in that respect, this is a very important idea. That's probably what differentiates an ordinary people from a real university graduate to start with. And tomorrow and on Friday, on the other hand, we're going to see that we will need to be a little bit beyond critical thinking in certain aspects that we will talk about the type of systems that we deal as industrial engineers. So critical thinking is just a prerequisite for you, but you need to go even further. And we will discuss that, hopefully, appreciating the things that we said here and tomorrow and after your readings will be my target. In other words, I'm not expecting you to understand everything thoroughly, but I want you to appreciate whatever you are reading and try to apply it in your own life and in your approaches that you take in different courses. So that's the idea. Now, another thing which is important is that if you, anybody who looked at the readings? Okay, now you probably noticed that there are a lot of hints about writing, okay, and reading. So this is going to be very helpful with respect to the term paper that you are doing. And at the same time, with respect to the qualitative questions that you are answering in the exam. Okay, you have to read that thoroughly. And if you can understand the relation between those and some of the questions, I think I have fulfilled my target with respect to discussing this topic in this classroom. Okay, we're going to start with the video. This is a video from, if I am not mistaken, University of Leeds. And it is called the video on critical thinking. So let's hear that.
To be a good critical thinker is to start with an open mind. In school and in university and in life, we're often told things. We're told this is right or this is wrong. When we think critically, we don't just accept that first statement. We start to think, well, why did they say that? When did they say that? In what context did they say that? What impacted upon that? And by understanding the wider context of the statement, we can then start to pull it apart, to think about it, think critically about it.
One of the main things about research is to be flexible in how you think about what might tell you what you want to know. Most collections can tell you something about a range of topics. For example, at the university, in the library, we have a cookery collection, which is maybe a bit off the wall, but it's used for a range of different research, such as gender studies, women's writing, food, nutrition, illness, domestic life. So it's really important just to keep an open mind about what something can tell you. You'll be surprised, I think, the sorts of information you can bring together to make your arguments.
One of the things that I've researched using data from the M&S archive is the advertising of schoolwear. And for example, on their advertising brochure that they have for the 1969-1970 school year, through this we can talk about linguistics, we can talk about society, we can talk about media studies, we can talk about business. For example, we might analyse from a linguistic level this word clever. It's saying clever mums and dads. And the implication of that is, if you're not shopping at M&S, then you're not clever. Then we've got this mums and then and dads written in handwritten text. Well, what's the effect of that? It's saying, mums are buying the school uniform, but come the end of the 60s or 70s, we know that dads are maybe starting to get involved too. The family unit is changing. So we as M&S are going to recognise this change, but still say, Yeah, we know it's mostly mums, but oh, look, dads, we're not forgetting about you either. So very clever kind of subliminal messaging there. So just through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words, we can start to see links to social change, marketing, even media studies, use of image and words together.
One of the key skills that we look for in our students and that we ask our students to develop, and we call that critical thinking. In science, just as in any other discipline, there are differences of opinion, there is conflicting evidence, and there is uncertainty. Uncertainty is a key part of the scientific process. We are never going to get rid of it. You need to develop the skills to assess the uncertainty for yourself, to assess the evidence and the arguments given by different researchers in the field, and to come to your own understanding and conclusions about whose point of view you agree with and why.
It is in many ways a journey, and you will only come to your answers after a long period of work and research. Often it will require us to start with one source and then move to a second source to question that, and then move to another source to question that. Thinking critically is always going to be difficult, it's going to be challenging, it's going to demand skills from you that you've perhaps not used before. But I can absolutely assure you, it is really exciting. It will take you to places in terms of your thinking that you've never been before.
Okay, so this is the video that I asked University of Leeds to prepare for me for this course. Okay, so because if you read the last 2 slides, that's the requirement that you have for the term paper. This is what I want you to do in the term paper. You are going to go from one source to another to explore answers to certain questions that you are looking for. And eventually you're going to come up with a writing with your own assessment of certain different things that you read. So this is what I'm aiming. So I think you have to see this a number of times before you actually start writing for your requirement. Okay, any questions on this? Okay, let's watch another one, but this one will be more structured. So this is again, this is even shorter, I suppose, but let's see. Okay.
Give someone a fish and they'll eat that day. Teach them how to catch a fish and they'll never go hungry. Proverbs like this remind us how learning skills helps to move us towards self-reliance.
Okay, so you can see actually it starts with this description. You may have skipped that because we moved from one to the other very fast. So basically it talks about dependence versus self-reliance by giving one of the examples that I tried to give in the beginning of the semester. Are you staying at the dorm? Are you taking care of yourself, or somebody else is taking care of you? Okay, so that was my thought. So this shows some kind of a dependence. Of course, these are very symbolic. My examples are symbolic as well. I am not basically pointing out anybody. But the idea is that you want to be self-reliant, and that's the key of critical thinking. Okay? In other words, you have to make sure that you can live with your own sources and live with your own decisions, which is very difficult in these days in Turkey, but I think this is what you should be shooting for. Okay. Okay, so we can continue.
With critical thinking. Memorize the solution to a problem and you may master that particular problem. Improve your critical thinking and you'll give yourself the tools to create your own effective solutions to a multitude of unfamiliar problems. Critical thinking refers to a diverse range of intellectual skills and activities concerned with evaluating information as well as our own thought in a disciplined way. When we're willing and able to examine our own capability as thinkers, acknowledging problems and weaknesses, this can help us refine our thought processes so that we learn to think and assess information in a more comprehensive way that increases our ability to identify and reject false ideas and ideology.
Okay, we're gonna see this again, so you don't need to write it because it's already available in the notes that I have distributed. But the previous slide is memorization versus learning how to do it. That's one of the reasons why I am always trying to give you the algorithms or anything that you might be able to use in the exam, except your rational thinking and approaching to that problem ideas. I can just supply it as a part of the exam to you. Okay, I don't want you to memorize anything. I had discussion with some of you in my office or during the breaks, and one thing which is almost very important is, the most important, I should say, excuse me, is you shouldn't be memorizing anything, because memorization, if you do it well, which is doubtful, even if you do it well, you will be mastering only one thing. Whereas if you learn, you will be able to solve similar problems. And unless you really understand and live with this idea, I think university education is not going to be of a great value as you would expect. Okay, this is very important. Okay, so let's continue without interruption.
Critical thinking isn't just thinking a lot. A person may spend a great deal of intellectual energy defending a flawed position or pursuing a question that actually needs reformulating before progress can begin. If they never examine possible flaws and biases behind their approach, that's not thinking critically. We must want to be better at thinking, to pinpoint and minimize any biasing influence on our thought from culture and upbringing, to seek out and be guided by knowledge and evidence that fits with reality, even if it refutes our cherished beliefs. Indeed, when we think critically, beliefs tend not to be cherished, but held on the understanding that if they're shown to be unfounded, a change of position is the most appropriate response. Critical thinkers cultivate an attitude of curiosity and eagerness to widen their perspective and broaden their knowledge, and they're willing to do the work required to keep themselves properly informed about a subject. They recognise that explanations must actually explain and be testable to be worthy of serious consideration, and that legitimate theories clearly define the circumstances in which they'll concede defeat. Critical thinking embraces scepticism. Scepticism doesn't mean an indiscriminate rejection of ideas, as some mistakenly believe. It refers to doubting and suspending our judgment about claims with which we are presented, so that we don't simply accept claims which might be unjustified, but first take the time to understand them, examining the reasoning and possible assumptions and biases behind.
Okay, this is important. Skepticism is basically curiosity-driven questioning. Okay, so you don't believe in everything, but you are always uneasy to believe certain things that you really don't understand clearly. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily mean that you indiscriminately you reject all the ideas. It shouldn't be that way, because that is as bad as not having any critical thinking. It's basically not having any critical thinking. So you have to make sure that skepticism is basically make sure that skepticism is used to doubt and to delay your judgment before you understand all aspects of the matter. It's hard for us to basically delay certain judgments in a lifetime where everything is going very fast. I understand that, but I think the key idea is that you don't need to answer certain questions immediately to yourself or to somebody else. Okay? So this is basically very important. If there is a claim, you have to make sure that you understand the reasoning behind the claim, the assumptions, and the biases that created that claim. Okay? This is important. We're going to talk a little bit more on this type of issues today. But this is actually critical.
Factual claims should be based in sound, consistent logic, not on emotions and social pressure, because the truth value of factual claims isn't determined by the emotion that accompanies them, or the fact that they may be believed by certain social groups. Sometimes people try to persuade us that reason has no value, but that's an untenable position. Arguing against reason is cutting off the branch on which you sit, using the very thing you're dismissing in order to construct a case against it. Reason has an intrinsic role in the decisions and judgments we make as we negotiate our way through life, whether they be momentous or trivial. If a particular line of reasoning is flawed, what will increase our understanding? Dismissing the value of reason or looking honestly at the flaws? A lack of respect for reason or evidence, or any number of obstructive character traits, will sabotage one's capacity for critical thought. One of the biggest barriers to critical thinking is an unwillingness to see complex issues in anything other than black and white terms. If one sees only two options when more exist, this constitutes a false dichotomy. Consciousness is often presented as something that's either an eternal, immaterial entity or reducible and identical to brain states, when in fact there are various other positions. Many divide people into those who accept evolution and those who believe in specific gods, where these categories are not mutually exclusive. If we think in false dichotomies, we'll tend to draw false conclusions. For example, by judging that if option A is false, option B must be true. We may also misrepresent others by wrongly assuming that if they don't hold attitude X, they must hold attitude Y. Black and white thinking often reflects an underlying reluctance or refusal to deal with the uncertainty that results from complexity and an absence of definite answers. But leaping to flawed conclusions because you can't tolerate the ambiguity of not knowing is not about truth or curiosity, but comfort. The critical thinker can handle uncertainty, preferring to be aware of their own areas of ignorance, and they can wait for valid evidence and evidence-based answers. Critical thinking provides each of us with the keys for unlocking our own intellectual independence, leaving us willing and able to explore and solve problems for ourselves. It moves us away from rash conclusions, mystification, and a reluctance to question received wisdom, authority, and tradition. It moves us towards intellectual discipline, the clear expression of ideas, and the acceptance of personal responsibility for our own thinking. Communities in which individuals are eager to acquire and apply the best knowledge and reason in all fields, and willing to acknowledge and correct flaws in their own thinking, are better equipped to create more profoundly effective solutions to the challenges we face in living and living together. When we teach and encourage critical thinking, we empower individual lives and invest in our collective future.
Okay. Well, the reason, the timing of this topic was coincidental. Okay, it had nothing to do with what we have seen as a result of the elections. Okay, Turkey divided into two large groups, more or less. So it has nothing to do. It was the course of the way that I prepared it, but by chance it came out to be this week. You can draw a lot of analogies, but that's not going to be our topic, of course. We will proceed with some definitions and some examples, okay, of the things that we have seen. But I think visually seeing it, certain things are going to be more helpful, and that's the purpose of actually showing these videos. I think you need to see them a couple of more times before you understand truly what is meant in each of them. Okay, now you all have a copy of the notes. Now let's start simply with the definition. So what is critical thinking? We have heard a number of things about critical thinking. It's thinking based on logical reasoning and questioning, which enables you to reflect on the weaknesses and strengths of any evidence provided, draw conclusions, and contribute new ideas to a topic. So you can see that critical thinking takes today, analyzes it thoroughly, and brings something for tomorrow. So that's the idea. It is not thinking a lot or just thinking for thinking, but you basically want to achieve something at the end, contribute new ideas to the topic that you are reading or thinking or modeling in our sense. Now, for our daily routine, think about the efforts that you spent for the university entrance exam. And think about what we did for the university entrance exam 2 weeks ago or last week. Okay? The way that we have seen that problem, we intellectualized that problem a lot, but we solved it in a rather different way. So here, Okay, so here the question is, for our daily routine, we are probably achieving some of these goals that are prescribed by critical thinking. When you are buying something, when you are making a decision with respect to which service provider to pick up, whether to pick up the service provider to, that are Nesim, or I don't remember even the names. My service provider is there and old, but still there. Okay, so basically you do it in your personal life. Now, even in daily routines of work life, you are going to apply this as a person. Now, of course, at the university level, we are doing this at one step higher level. So everything that we have done personally for you, of course, is helping you to enrich as a person, but our aim in critical thinking is basically to apply it to the academic life meaning your work life, which is going to be utilizing your academic background. So this is where we are aiming. We are not aiming, well, implicitly I am aiming to have richer personalities, so on and so forth, but my aim is to enrich you academically. Okay. So everyday life activities, let's look at these activities. Now, which of them do you think are going to require critical thinking, and which of them are going to require just thinking? Can you make a suggestion? For example, buying a car. Do you think that it requires critical thinking? Yes. Choosing courses at university. Good. I will remind you in later years, okay? Because you're going to have other expectations when you are picking up a course, okay? Not necessarily critical thinking. Okay, but remember this, okay? Promise to remember. Some of you are my advisees, so I'm going to remind them if they come to me, of course. Now, brushing your teeth. Why not? Is it unimportant? It is not unimportant, but it only requires basic level of thinking. Okay? In other words, there is a certain way that you brush your teeth, and you have to make sure that you don't lose control and brush your teeth in that manner. But it is not unimportant. It's very important. Well, that's the claim, actually. And it is a very important part of your digestion system. Okay, digestion starts with your teeth, and it's very important to keep up with that. So this doesn't necessarily mean that everything noble and important are going to go through critical thinking. No, if you ask me, buying a car is less important than brushing your teeth. Seriously. Okay? But you can see that this only requires regular thinking. It doesn't require you to have a very sophisticated understanding of different things. Now, deciding between several job offers. Critical thinking. Okay. Selecting a phone or internet package. Very critical thinking. Okay. And jogging. Critical thinking or not? Do you know what jogging is? Okay. Anybody who doesn't know what jogging is? Running around. You run on the streets like this with little steps. Okay. So do you think that it is a critical thinking activity or a regular activity? Regular activity. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that jogging is unimportant again. Same arguments will go out. Okay, so we have an understanding of what requires which. And so you're going to use more brain power in a more systematic way. That's the idea, actually. Okay. Now, the way that University of Toronto document describes critical thinking, most of the universities have these type of documents. So I collected a few of them, and that formed your reading list. Okay, so it says that critical thinking is a higher order of thinking. So it is not regular thinking, it's a higher order thinking. It focuses on thought, not how is the main question that is asked, not just what. Okay, now this is important. So how is you are more interested in the way that things happen rather than whether they happen or not. Okay? So this is actually the key difference between regular thinking and critical thinking. Now, critical thinking is self-reflexive. Self-reflexive means that by questioning and testing, what you do is you reflect on your own thinking process. So you come up with your own thinking process, and you make sure that you apply the essence of critical thinking. So in that respect, it brings your own biases and your own expectations into the observable level, and that's the reason why it is called reflexive. It reflects you out there when you are really applying this procedure. Think about when you are selecting the universities and putting weights on certain criteria. Okay? So if you are putting more weight on this type of a criteria than the other, what you are doing is you are reflecting your expectations. Your own thought process actually comes into picture when you are doing that. So you can see that what we are talking here is a lot related to what we talk about when we talk about decisions. Decision making is actually, it starts with critical thinking. Otherwise, you are not going to be able to make decisions. Now, as a profession who helps in decision making, you have to understand how that process evolves, of course. So that's the reason why you have to understand the idea of critical thinking. Okay, now critical thinking is discipline specific. So in other words, it is not going to be the same for art historians and scientists like chemists, for example. It will be different, of course. Of course, there are some broad lines between these fields that will make it different. Now, in our case, we will use mathematical reasoning. So logic is going to be extremely important. But at the same time, because of the reasons that I told you in the beginning of the semester and several times, verbal and written communication skills are what we expect to enrich by critical thinking. And this is what we need. Now, in one of these documents, it's writing that humans, when they are being tutored, so I am tutoring you now in a certain way. Actually, when they are tutored, they take notes. The way that they take notes is actually the way that they feel this part is important for me, and that's what they write. They don't write everything which is written here. You already have that. But what you need to write is you need to write certain parts of the discussion which is going to be more meaningful for you. That's the reason why in the beginning of the semester, I said that at least have a pen or pencil ready so that you may want to write something. If you don't write anything in any of the courses, of course, then probably you are not in the correct place. Okay? You should be somewhere else, solving puzzles. Okay? And, well, you can form 4 groups of 4 and solve puzzles, of course. You can do it with more people, which might be better.